Hello, everybody. I am at my mom's, and I have been receiving requests for people who wanted me to speak about my testimony. My mom also wanted me to hook up her new Logitech camera because she felt like she needed to get one, which I was kind of excited about because it had been like in my spirit that, which perhaps it was the Lord speaking to me that my mother needs to get a camera. She hears from the Lord herself. She calls it her direct connect. So of course, I never even said anything to her. I didn't have to confirm it, or I wasn't even really sure. I kind of just uh, brushed it off, I guess. But I was feeling like she needed to get a camera, and she did. I know that people have been talking about how the Lord is going to be calling more of His watchmen to make videos, and my mother definitely has lots of dreams and things. So the combination of her wanting to like see how the camera works, and people wanting me to talk about my testimony is why I said, well, I'll just do this. I have a little time um, before she comes home from work. I don't really, it's very painful and hurtful and upsetting to even really think about it, and I've been like in turmoil the last 2 days. For one, because I mentioned lots of things about myself and about my life in pretty much all of my videos. It's like your ministry, your life is going to be a part of your ministry. Your testimony is going to be a part of my ministry. So for a person to want me to just make an actual video about it, I'm just like, why don't they just watch the other videos? And so then I have to like go through my heart and through my mind, bringing up all of these horrible issues and things that have happened. And it is basically, it's retroactive a word. I don't know if that's a word, but going back, like even yesterday my mom was just like, I'm not your trash can, and I had to like just sort of remember because I just have this kind of, I don't know, I guess exalted view of my mother. I always have, I guess. And so I just um kind of just think, oh, well, she's very strong and nothing really bothers her. But I do forget sometimes, like, oh, like the Lord had to remind me, she is a woman, she is your mother, and no parent, especially your mother, wants to like certain things they just don't want to hear. Certain things it's just too painful. Then you start going through all the woulda, coulda, shouldas, and it's of no consequence. It like means nothing. It's going to be what it's going to be, which is what it is. The Lord said to me through her. My mother was speaking, but it was but she was the Lord was speaking, but through my mother. And it's like she always, you don't get a do over. You don't get to go back. You can go through your mind all constantly, like maybe if this had changed, if that had changed, things would be different. And I do that like every single day, all day. So like it just happens, and it's like I really just try to let go, and like it's very difficult because I don't want to talk about it, but at the same time, it's just like ever present. It's like just the simple fact that I have a memory, and having to deal with the core issues of or the core reasons behind every issue and every problem that I've had ever in life, why things didn't work out, why things didn't go the way I wanted, why I was not successful in this or that thing. A lot of times it is because of us, and you can't, you want to blame people, and a lot of times they do play their part, and they are at fault, and then that's what's hurtful, that's what's painful. The generational curses, all of that is definitely there. It's nothing you can do about it. God allowed it, and so then you have to go through the whole issues of, well, why did God allow it, and why did I have to be? Why did this have to happen? Why did that have to be? And it's like you don't go anywhere. It doesn't get you anywhere. And even like listening to Prophet JC, I don't know if some of you know JC Moore. He's I think on Facebook it's JC Moore or Prophet JC Moore, and here it's Prophet JC. But he's a very good Hispanic guy. He has a lot of videos. Some showing him doing well, the Lord using him to do healings and things like that. But he did a series on about the heart and deliverance of the heart and conditions of the heart and everything like that on his Blog Talk Radio show. And we don't like we have to let go of our I guess desire or will or whatever it is that to be hurt, to feel like, okay, well, we at least have the right to feel hurt. Like surely God understands why we're upset or why we're hurt or why we feel bad. and know we actually don't have the right to do that, which hurts even more because then it's like people can pretty much do to you whatever they want and say to you whatever they want. You can't do anything. If when the time comes and people are being beaten, Stephen did not pick up a rock and throw a rock back at people who were stoning him to death. He was not allowed to do that. He was not allowed to say, well, I can't hit them, but at least I can curse and be, and just express my displeasure for the fact that they're stoning me because he had done nothing wrong that he deserved to be stoned, you see. So even when we've done nothing wrong, it's like that wanting to be, I guess, hurt and to be. No, he wasn't even allowed to feel hurt in his heart because then he would have not gone to heaven. So then you go through the whole like condemnation and everything like that because it's like, well, if you have these feelings and these emotions because you're a human, does that mean that we now go to hell? Does that mean we like what does that mean? Are we going to lose rewards? And so it's very just difficult because like I am still going through. Like a testimony is supposed to be this happened, that happened, then the breakthrough happened, and now this is what's going on, and that is not a reality for me. So people will say I'm negative, or the Lord, I believe, said to me once that I'm contrary, or that I have a contrary spirit, which was funny because like the next day, a friend of mine who still is pretty much a practicing homosexual, and he's been going to church and he sort of accepted Christ and he grew up in the church and kind of gave his life back to Christ, I guess. But it's like I don't know how to explain it. I know the Lord said to me, I was kind of trying to do things from the outside in, and it has to be from the inside out. It has to happen in the heart. So a lot of things people do, like certain things they watch, certain places they go, I just don't understand. Like, how can I be a Christian and feel grace and feel favor and feel like it's okay? And then it's like the Lord's like, well, I'm working in their heart, and like because then once the heart is, he was explaining to me like once the heart is cleaned up, then the outward stuff just like follows very quickly. But when you try to do the outward stuff, it doesn't work. So just getting back real quick to the friend that I was speaking about, he said to me, "Oh, you're so contrary," which was so weird because it was probably the day before that the Lord had said, you have a, he just said contrary, and I knew he was saying I have a contrary spirit, and I do, and a lot of that is because growing up, people just hated me. Period. I'm looking at a picture now. Well, it's dark in here, but I can see the picture my mother has of me, and I have a nice tie and a nice sweater and a shirt, and I'm sure I had on some sort of slacks and dress shoes. We grew up in the projects. We grew up in the ghetto. I remember the urine in the hallway. I remember the elevator that never worked. I remember the drugs. I remember the crackheads. I remember seeing people OD. I remember seeing police beat people up. I remember seeing the police take drugs and money from people and then go behind the back of the building and split the money between themselves and split the drugs, whatever the hell's case may be. I remember that was a part of life. And that's what I knew. And I remember people just seeming to hate me for no good reason. I remember in the midst of all of that, and if you've never been in that type of environment, maybe you've seen a movie like New Jack City or Boys in the Hood or something. But I'm dressed in, like I said, tie, sweater. My mother is like dressed to the nines. People respected her. They looked up to her. They loved her. She was always somewhat like a queen. She did beauty pageants. I remember my aunt telling me, "Oh, we just knew your mother was going to be an actress," and we was just really surprised. Like, she ended up getting married or whatever. She's doing good. Of course your mother's doing well. Everybody knew she was going to do well, but it's just, but still, it was just, a lot of people was really kind of surprised because we just like knew she was going to be like famous. That is the view people had of my mother. I remember in school, people would see her and be like in utter shock, like, oh my God, like, how is she so pretty? And it was weird to me because it's my mother. I see her all the time. I'm thinking, well, yeah, she's pretty. Like, isn't Aunt Girl supposed to be pretty? Like, didn't understand. But people, it was almost like they had never. I didn't understand. Like, and a lot of it, I guess, was probably just the anointing that was on her life. Then I know that I inherited my gift from her. She definitely has direct connect, a prophetic gift. Sometimes she'll say, "Oh, the gift is working," But like, I would go to school though, and I would be teased and made fun of and picked on every single day. Every day, without fail. I remember being called gay from a time that I didn't even know what that word meant. Oh, you're trying to be white. You think you're better than people. None of that was true. And we watched a show called Dark Girls last night, and I think because people who were unattractive or in our culture having kinky hair or being dark skinned was considered not pretty, and having a mother who was fairer skinned and very pretty, I think a lot of those kids probably had parents or heard other adults maybe whispering, never would they say it in my mother's face, but whispering things. Because even when we watched that show, my mother was just like oblivious to like the fact that that was going on. Like she didn't even understand that people felt that way. And she's like, "Oh God, now I have to go back and think about when people used to call me red bone." And I'm like, "Yeah, they were calling you that because it was like an exaltation. It was like heralding. Like when she would come out, it was their way of saying, now this is what pretty should be. And if you don't look like this, then you know something's wrong." And so I believe that people were probably whispering things, and then somehow maybe the kids heard it, or I don't know what it was, but they just seemed to. And I was lighter even then, even now, like from in the summertime I get darker, and then just hereditary in my DNA on my father's side, especially, or even on my mother's side, I guess it's like we get older and we get darker. So I was, of course, even lighter, a little lighter then. And when you're a child, you have very smooth skin and things. And people, they just did not like me. And I always felt ugly. And like I look at pictures of myself, and I did not say, "Oh wow, I wish I still looked like that. I wish I still had that nose." Have bumps and bruises from being punched in the nose or from getting kicked when you do cheerleading and you do different things like basket tosses. One time, a girl like her whole like leg hit me in my nose, whatever. But so I look back at those pictures and think, "Oh, I really was attractive," but I always felt ugly because people tell me, "Oh, your head's too big, your ears are too big, you talk too much." That was still to this day. "Oh, he's always motor mouth, jabber jaws." People just hated me. I went to school already knowing kind of how to read because my mother would read to me and she would teach me how to read, and it was like not acceptable to her that I didn't know how to read. I went to Head Start because my grandmother was a Head Start teacher. Anything about me, any advantage that I had, people hated me and they chose to verbalize it constantly, like always. The other kids, I penny loafers, as I said, or I would wear Lacoste. Lacoste was something that very preppy people, the kids from Georgetown and Sitwell Friends and the children of the senators maybe wore Lacoste, but in the ghetto neighborhoods, people didn't know what that was. For those of you who maybe come from the gay lifestyle and you know about urban labels, now Lacoste is more like an urban label because people in the quote unquote ghetto wear it. They have the knockoffs because you see all the rappers and everything like that. But in the 80s, people didn't know Lacoste. I had an aunt, the one I stay with now, she had Gucci and she had things like that growing up because my uncle had a good job in the government and all white leather furniture and everything. And so he would buy her these things, Gucci and um back then it was the MCM bags and all of those types of things, but she didn't know what it was. And she also shared with me how she felt, even though she had things that were better than other people, she felt less than people because they didn't know what those labels were. So when I'm wearing Lacoste, which is now an urban label, but back then was more preppy and kind of expensive, the kids made fun of me because they're like, "Oh, you have an alligator on your shirt," because they all wore Oshkosh Bagosh. And so like in that period of time, I just did not like myself. I did not want to be myself. I always wanted to be other people. I loved movies, especially the movies where they would sing and dance because like you could be different people. You get to be. For me, it was being another person. It was not acting, which really is what it is now that I've been like awakened. The Lord explains to me how these demons and the Illuminati and all of that stuff goes on in these people. A lot of these character actors are really like having demons put into them, sometimes on purpose, or sometimes it could be things they're doing or saying and they really aren't completely aware of what's really going on. And and they really, so it's like somebody is acting, but a lot of it is they've channeled a person's spirit. I know like Ray Charles died when Jamie was making that movie, and so it gets very complicated, and I don't want to go too far into that. But it was for me, I could be another person. So I didn't want to be myself because on one hand, like I said, people would say, "Oh, how beautiful my mother was, how smart and everything like that," but they never said anything like that about my father. Never. In fact, I still to this day remember someone saying to me, "That's your mother?" And then like the other kids was just like, "Yeah, I know she's so pretty." And they like talked about that for like a long time and for a few minutes, and the kid was like, "Yeah, I know she's like, I mean, like beyond pretty. I don't know how that's your mother. You must look like your father." because you don't look anything like your mother. Your mother is so pretty. So to me, that was like the fact that you don't look like makes you ugly. And you know, I'll share things with my mom before, and she says that she was just my mother just does not think negative. I think that's why her direct connect is so strong. So she never like thought about my gay lifestyle or anything like that. And so a lot of things that she had said in my life, I realized, oh, okay, that was really just like the Lord speaking. Because I mean, but it was coming out of my mother's mouth. So I remember one time somebody saying, "Oh, you look like her," like when they saw my mother, and I remember feeling very uncomfortable because even though this guy, there was nothing about him that would make you think he was gay. I got that feeling in my spirit, like this is one of those guys that probably like was messing around with guys, and having guys submit to him sexually, like when he was in prison or something like that. And it felt very pedophile. It felt very like pedophile. Even though I was an adult and he was like a much older adult. He probably was maybe my mother's age. It was very. I just didn't like his spirit. And I remember my mother like kind of looking at him and rolling her eyes. I was like, but no, he looks like his father. And I remember whatever those spirits, whatever was going on in the neighborhood, backing up like feet, like many, many different feet, because my mother's she has a lot of power in her voice and her words, period. And they backed up, And of course, I didn't understand that then, but now, like when I look back, it's like I can have a better understanding of what was going on spiritually. And I mean, she kind of also looked and said, well, see, that's the problem. No, he looks like his father. He wants to look like me. See, that's the problem. She probably doesn't remember saying that, but I remember her saying that, and I know that really it was God because, like I said, these are the type of things that people as Christians don't want to deal with. And that was a problem. And God knew, like, no, yes, really, he does. But that's the problem with most homosexuals is they like their mothers more than they like their fathers for very good reasons a lot of times. And so they look up to the women in their life. They see that the women are the ones that are strong, that a lot of times have the education or have the good jobs or that are there for you, that are like doing what they're supposed to do, and then some. Also picking up the slack for the husbands. And so then even in society, like there's been like a role reversal where they have put women on over men. The Bible says that your desire shall be towards your husband. That's what he told Eve. And I know that they teach at my father was explaining to me something that was taught at the church he used to go to at Southern Baptist, that like how that word can has a like connotation or a meaning of like wanting to kind of exalt themselves over the man, which you will see in the next verse. It says, but he shall rule over you. So you kind of see that God was saying you're going to always want to be over the man. Like that's part of the curse for women. And so, of course, the devil through society, through movies, through media and everything has done that. And the men have made it very easy because it's the women that are in the church and the women that take care of the kids. And even during the war, like you talk about all the work that the women had to do during the war effort, and they have like proven like just about any job a man can do, they can do. And it's like a lot of times people grow up feeling like, having issues because of that, and like I said, it's hard telling your testimony because you do have to mention other people, and other people don't want to be mentioned, or they don't want to feel like you're blaming them, or they don't want to feel guilty, they don't even want to remember or know about these things, but it is my testimony, like it is the truth. It's like I didn't even understand that I had those feelings and things until I really got saved and got born again, and then the Lord begins to show you yourself. Like my father prophesied to me. We all prophesy in part, and he said to me, the first thing God is going to show you is you. And I've heard other people say that, maybe he had heard it somewhere. And so you have to, like, we have to address those issues and those feelings. Yes, you do. It's like I would rather, because my dad never really had a solid job, never really had money. He was always so focused on like doing other things, always so focused on church. Church to me was like, it was like everyone was going to hell, and everyone deserves to just go to hell. And it was all about talking about all the reasons why everyone's going to hell. And it was like, all right, then let's worship God because he's God. And for me, honestly, I love being there. I loved worshiping God. I remember loving God very much. I didn't necessarily think he loved me, but I didn't necessarily think that he should, that he had to. It was like, okay, when they talked about him dying on the cross, and that it was like really God in Jesus' body, I was just like, wow. Oh my goodness, it was really like, for me, he didn't need to do anything else. He should have not done that because we all should just go to hell. I'm like, he really did that? it was just to me like I still, remember the feeling, and I can't express how I can't even put in words how I felt. It was just like, wow, and that really just made me think, oh my God, like he is just everything, and Jesus is just everything. But still, there was the ridicule. There was always that I like, oh, I think he's gay. All my life, like every conversation. If I went to the movies with a cousin once, and my father like had a fit because he didn't think I should hang with him because he was gay. He came to visit to see me perform, and my father was outraged. Which my cousin was a drug addict, and the outfit he had on was, if you've seen like music videos and how inappropriate those girls dress, that's pretty much how he was dressed. And he was, it was even worse because he was a boy and like not even a drag queen. Like he didn't have a makeup. He doesn't have like fake breasts. This is still like the 90s, So he was not like a transvestite. He was just a gay boy, and he did have, I think, some like makeup in his hair, but he didn't like have breasts or anything, and little tiny shorts. And he was dressed very inappropriate to be at the Kennedy Center, which is a very prestigious and sort of highbrow organization, here in the Washington area. All the big ballet companies and orchestras and things come there. And so I was kind of, for me, it was like, oh, you can't dress like that here. But they just was like horrified. I was not allowed to speak to him. But he was the only one in my family that came. Even when he would be on a drug binge, he would make his way to my shows at my high school. He would pop up out of the blue, and I was like, oh, no one else really came. But then once again, like I said, was that their fault? No, because I didn't let anyone know, because I just was so, by this time, once I started singing and like dancing and things, I was so self-involved that I didn't even bother to speak to my family or talk to them. And now that I've been born again, it's like I realize how much my family really does love me and how much they were there for me, but I just did not realize it. So I would never call them. I would never speak to them. I wouldn't ask them things. I wouldn't like involve them in my life. And a lot of that was because of the guilt and shame of living a gay lifestyle. Once that actually happened, and then when I was younger, it was just like I said, I was just so self-involved. I was now on the road in my mind to becoming famous or becoming wealthy, which was from youth was my dream. I was telling my mom I used to have a poster of Prince in the room. I still remember that poster in Clifton Terrace. And I used to literally get on my knees in front of Prince's poster and pray. I wanted to be him. I wanted to like not so much be him, but to like look like him. I felt like if I just a more narrow, if I looked more white, you know, um, my mind was just really messed up. So even little things like a mom would say, as a black man, you're gonna have to work really hard in life. It's like you have to work almost like you have to be 10 times better. She was just speaking out of reality because as a black woman working in a bank where basically everyone was white men, and for her to not have a college degree, the work and the mind, she had to go out of the house looking perfect every day. She had to show her brain power. She had to prove herself, and she knew that it was hard enough for her, but in a sense, because she's a woman, it was kind of like, oh, you can smile and flirt a little bit, or you can, it was a little bit like you can kind of maneuver, but she was just really giving me really good words of wisdom. As a black man in America, yes, you do have to be like 10 times better a lot of the times, you know. But for me, in my mind said, well, it would have just been easier if I just was a girl, or if I was white. Well, preferably a white girl, but I mean, at least if I just was white, but I would see black people who were very fair skinned and had green eyes and things like that. And to me, that was like what you should be. That was not my mom's fault, my father's fault. That was no one's fault. That was just the way I thought, the way I felt, the the ideas that you put in my head, the things you see on media. Um, I was always just very insecure. I felt like everyone hated me. People were just always so mean. So even when people were telling me good things, I became very rebellious, very stubborn, and very mean myself. People used to tell me I was not going to live to see 10 because I would just curse you out. I mean, I cursed. They used to say I cursed worse than a sailor. My name is Roni, but people will call me Grony because they were in amazement of how a child 5 or 6 years old would look full-grown adults in the face, and I mean tear them down to the point where they just would get away from me and just did not bother me, but that was why I was doing it. I learned that, okay, my words, I could really just hurt people, and that would make them leave me alone because I was so used to seeing people fight. I was not a fighter. I always hated violence. I couldn't stand to see someone hit someone. The thought of hitting someone was horrifying to me because it's like you could hurt them. Why would a person hurt another person? But all of that was chalked up, oh, see, he's just a sissy, he's gay, because I wasn't violent and because I wouldn't, I didn't want to hurt people and I didn't want to sleep around. And I remember being very young and kids, they were having sex, like 5 or 6 year olds, and they were talking about sex, and it was all about how big penises were to be. And, that was like, oh, that was just the conversation you would hear so much. And, you have to have sex because, oh, who would want to be a virgin when you get married? I'm not marrying some man. And, he can't satisfy me. What if you get married and find out he has a small penis? And I mean, these are things that I would hear as a child. And so you become very self-aware, very self-conscious, and all types of those sort of issues, wanting to be white, penis envy, envying other. That people don't talk about those things, but these are core issues in the gay lifestyle. Those are things. So little boys start looking at other little boys in the locker room because you're trying to size yourself up. You're saying, oh my goodness, and especially as a black man, because everybody on here is an adult, and it's not like you've never heard these stereotypes. So as a black man, they act like you ought to be hung like a horse. These are actually things they say. These are things you hear as a child. And so when that's not the case for you, you develop what they call penis envy, or you develop, all of these types of issues because of society. And as I said, the hard thing is dealing with the fact that God knows all of that, but at the same time, it is no excuse. It is not an issue that we can, like, you can't just sort of, we cannot have a pity party. It's like, great, now move on, and so, but it's hard because you realize that those issues are what shaped your mentality. And then all of those words are so powerful, so those spirits and things were just influencing you and getting into your mind, and you have to deal with all of that. I didn't mention the rape. Yes, the same cousin who my father was like, he didn't want to come visit me. No one knew about the rape until after I got born again and told them a couple of years ago. I myself had no memory of it. I started having nightmares, and I thought they were just nightmares. And as I got older, I believe it was the Lord in my heart, because he knew that this was going to be a big issue and I would have to really get over it. So he began to work on my heart, and to the point where he allowed me to understand that this was something that actually happened. And the pain and guilt and stuff was not there because it still, to me, was like a dream, even though I started remembering and understanding that this was an event that happened. And I thought it was one person, but it ended up not being that person. And I found out when my cousin, on his death, he was dying a very horrible death of AIDS. Very, very painful. And he was, he said, I'm sorry, but it was like, I'm sorry. And that took because afterwards he was like, and I had to get him water. He could only sip like this much water because he would choke. And so I gave him that one little sip, and he was breathing so hard and kind of I think went to sleep because it took even God to give him enough physical strength just to go, sorry, because he was just in that much pain. And then I remember a voice which sounded very comforting, and it was like a voice I recognized. I knew the voice, but at that moment, I would have not been able to say to you, oh, the Lord spoke to me. I would have not really known what to say or feel, but I just was like, it was him. And the Lord would speak to me a lot of times. I thought it was just like my own thoughts, even though it seemed to be coming, not necessarily sounding like my voice, or not really coming from my head, maybe from I would feel something here. But it was kind of coming from the sky or something. I can't explain it. Those of you who hear the voice of the Lord know what I mean. But of course, I was unsaved. I was, I believed Jesus Christ was God. As I said, I loved church. But there was so, growing up, there was just so much hatred, and even there, so much religion, and I wanted to dance. And my father was so focused on his new wife and their family and their church, because the church is run by her in-laws and her sisters and things. And so it was my life had to revolve around them. And if you can't dance, you can't even sing unless you're going to sing in church, and you have to sing at this church and this choir. And if you're not going to, well then, oh well, because you're going to have to come with us every weekend and sit in the church all day Saturday, because everyone has so many different responsibilities, from singing in a choir, teaching Bible study, and everything was surrounding the church. So even if I did not be in the choir, I would have to still be there and sit all day and listen to them. And that's not what I wanted to do for my life. And I knew that my dad, as I said, does not have much money and really couldn't do much for me, and I was trying to make a life for myself. So I kind of stopped going to visit him, period. He also, there was issues I had with him and his wife, well, with his wife, which I didn't seem to think that he understood. Of course, now when we share things, I understand that he did understand, but I guess he was trying to make it work, and he kind of complains and has a lot of issues. And it's very hard for me to have to listen to him, because I'm saying to myself, you should have done something then, because the Lord then spoke to me and said he is not to follow her very clearly. Same like voice from the sky. He is not to follow her. And he gave me understanding that, he's trying to like to do everything he can to impress her and her family and to fit in, and it should not be that way. But I said nothing. And so when they were trying to like force me into religion and into, I would rebel. But it was like, see, he has a rebellious spirit. He has a stubborn spirit, which I did, and it was always like the homosexual thing sort of looming. And it was like, I always just felt like I was the target. Always felt like something was chasing me. Something was like in all of my dreams. Even the last night at my mom's house, like somebody was telling me they were going to rip my colon out and wrap it around the right side of my body. He was like, oh, the pain is going to just be incredible. And someone was like at windows and had knives, and it kind of reminded me of the glimpses I've seen of the trailer for the movie, not the one where the girl sees somebody. That was horrifying, and I was fighting, but I didn't want to see any of that in my dream, where the darkness was coming out of the steps, and she said the lady in the dirty nightgown, and that was in her dreams. I said, oh Jesus, The Conjuring. That is the most highly demonic thing. Don't go see that. But this is the other one where they like everyone gets one night a year to go kill these people, and it was like that kind of stuff was invading my dreams. I always had nightmares. I always had bad dreams. Always, or just no dreams at all. Even at birth, my mother told me that, I had to have a C-section because the umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck. She's like, oh, the enemy's been trying to kill you since then. I shared that with my father. He said, yeah, because I remember them giving your mother something, telling her that the baby was not ready to come out yet. And so I ended up being born like 7 days later. Because they said that my mother, I guess, went to the hospital feeling like it was time for me to have the baby. And I was due on November the 9th, which I found out was my grandfather's birthday, actually, my father's father, which was interesting. And I don't guess my mother didn't remember that part, but my father remembered them giving my mother something to like keep me from having the baby, keep her from having me. And so during that time, whatever they gave her during that time, see, this is why I don't like needles and doctors and everything. Now I understand. So during that time, those demons began to try to wrap my throat and to kill me in my mother's stomach. Funny thing is, the same thing happened to my grandmother. The doctor gave her some kind of shot and told her the baby wasn't ready. And when she went home, my grandmother said some lady, one of her neighbors, she was always drinking. So she's half drunk and cursing and was like, oh no, you having this baby. And sure enough, grandmother went into labor because she was in so much pain. She was losing blood. She felt she was going to die. The baby was going to die. She didn't know what to do. She couldn't even think. But the Lord can use who he wants. So he sends a half drunk lady. And I can't remember if she said she was drunk, but she was just, I remember her she was cursing and going on and saying that, oh, you're going to have this baby. And my grandmother gave birth to my father in the house by herself with no anesthesia. My grandmother is 5 feet tall. Okay, maybe in that time, she's maybe size 14. In those days, she was, of course, a lot smaller. She's a very petite woman, And my father, I think, weighed 12 pounds at birth, 10 pounds or 12 pounds at birth. No anesthesia, no nothing. She had to give birth to him in the hospital because the doctors gave her a shot and said, oh, the baby's not ready. And so then, and she almost died. My father almost died. And then the same thing happened to me. They gave my mother a shot. And I was born 7 days later with an umbilical cord around my throat. They had to do an emergency C-section. I almost died trying to get here so that I can prophesy to people who don't give a damn about what it is I have to say. I never liked being on this planet. The first vision I had from the Lord, the first thing I said to him was, why am I here? But that's because I had to understand that I had existed before with him in heaven, and which I know that's kind of hard for people to understand. Check out Kat Carr. She talks about how we were God's breath, and she's seen it, and it looks like little gingerbread people, and they're saying, "Send me." Even T.D. Jakes spoke about it, and it was such a great confirmation to me for me when I first got born again. But and he picks and chooses, I guess, and he sends people on basically on a mission, and that was the understanding that I had in the vision. Of course, the Bible says that He breathed the breath of life into Adam. So the breath of life, because in Jesus is the light of the world, and in Him is life. So in Him is the breath of life. It's God's breath. When He breathes, there's light, and there's actually like beings. I guess you can call them spirit beings that come from Him, or whatever the case may be. As I said, that may be complicated for someone to understand, but I know before I knew of a T.D. Jakes or a Kat Kerr that when I had that vision as a child, the first thing I said to him was, "Why am I here?" Because I had the understanding that I was from where he was. The place where he was is where I was from, and I couldn't understand why it is that I had to be here and not there where I'm from. And he said, "You're special." And the understanding that he gave me was that I was a king. And I thought to myself, "Oh, that's impossible. I'm too young." Because I'm going by movies. So I'm thinking kings are older. I would have to be a prince. I'm too young to be a king. I remember a time when I was so angry I was going to kill someone. I felt like I could have. This was an adult, and the person grabbed me, the man that lives in my one of the buildings in the little ghetto neighborhood I was living in. And he like picked me up. He was a very big guy, and he laid hands on me and prayed for me. And he said, I remember him saying he is a prince on his way to kingship. He didn't know about the dream or the vision I had as a child, because at that time my memory had been wiped blank through homosexual living, through drugs, and through running the streets, and through so much just hatred and envy and jealousy and insecurity and lust and perversion and torment and affliction, and many of the things that I still struggle with, just eternally, just in the heart issues, grief and sorrow, and all of those things. It's just like my memory was wiped clean until I did get born again. So he didn't know about that dream, but when I think back, it's like, wow, I see how God was really in my life, because clearly, he said to me, "You're special," and I understood that I was a king. And I did ask him. He was talking to me about him coming back, and I've mentioned this before. And I said, "If you let me know ahead of time, I will warn the people." A prophet's job is to warn. So I did ask to be a prophet, but I remember the conversation was, he was not telling me, but in my heart, it was like he had put his heart in mine, and so it's like my desires and my will. He was like cutting through my desires and through my will and aligning my heart with his, so that what I would ask would be what it is was his will for me, so that then he could give me what it is I ask, because you do not receive because you don't ask. Ask and you shall receive. So he had to put his heart in mine, in me, and to give me his heart so that I could ask for the correct thing. Because that's why he was to be a prophet. So when I said I would warn the people, it was like bingo. And then there was a number 7, and I had the understanding that I would have like a time, 7. I was just like 7. Like I remember that number, and I kind of didn't understand completely, but of course I understood now that I would have 7 years, because I remember kind of just being like, well, if you let me know ahead of time, I'll let them know. I will warn the people, but I was like, well, how much? I didn't understand like when he's going to let me know. When, like, how was I going to know, like, what was going to be the sign? Like, I didn't, and he was just 7, was like, I guess, the sign of the number that I would understand that, okay, it's time for you to kind of let people know what's going on. And the Lord was always with me. As I said, that the religion, like the hatred and everything like that, it just was a bit much, but I still just loved God so much. I remember thinking that he had wrote the book of Psalms for me. I mean, really believing that he had only wrote it for me, and that what was in it was really what was in my heart, because I was trying to pray. I used to pray a lot as a child, and I couldn't. I felt I ran out of words, and I remember saying, "Oh my God, I really am trying to pray, but my mind is like blank. There is no words in my mind. I feel like I really want to pray, but I don't know what to say." And I remember opening to the book of Psalms, and I said, "Well, I'll just read my Bible," and I started reading because I was trying to find things to say. And I kept flipping through all the Psalms, like, and I remember thinking, well, all of this is what I want to say. I remember thinking, oh my God, that's what I was thinking. This is exactly what I was thinking, but not in my mind, because there were no thoughts, but just in my heart. I remember thinking, oh, that's exactly what I was thinking. That's what I was feeling. That's what I was trying to say. How do you do that? And I thought, oh my God, God has like magic powers. Of course, I didn't understand supernatural. So I'm thinking he has like some kind of magic powers where he knows what's in my heart, and he knows like what it is I was trying to say, like what I was feeling, And he like took my feelings and put them in words, and then went back in time and like put them in the Bible, so that everything that it's saying is like really what was in my heart. And I was just like, wow. And of course, David wrote it, and he was a man after God's own heart. So David was probably writing what it is God had put on his heart. And at that time, my heart was so pure, but it was so damaged because people could see my purity. The Lord has just let me understand that people could see my light and my purity, and it was not even the people. It was just so many, 99.9% of people are so demon possessed, and those demons in them really, really hated me with a perfect hatred. And so I was very mean, and I always did curse, and I always was looking for attention, and always looking for love, and always feeling insecure, and like, oh, no girl's gonna like me. I'm not hung enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not, I don't have any money. I come from a poor family. I just, all of those issues, which is why even in that vision, when he said to me, you're going to, I asked him to make me perfect. And I say it like that with an attitude because it's like, that's still what it is I want. Because when I hear, we're going to still have free will in the 1,000-year reign, it's like I knew that in my heart, but I really didn't want to hear that. I don't want to have free will. I don't want there to be a possibility to sin. I'm like, are we going to still have a sin nature in our glorified body? Like, are you serious? But even in your glorified body, does that mean we're going to still be tempted? Because there are going to be other nations and other people who are going to come and fight against God at the end of the 1,000-year reign. And it says that the enemy, when he comes, he can fool the very elect. And I have always felt in my spirit and soul that the very elect will even be those of us who are the raptured saints in the glorified bodies. And I just thought to myself, oh my God. So this crap is still not even over. After all of this, the tribulation and everything, we still have to, I feel like the entire time during the 1,000-year reign, I'm going to be a nervous wreck thinking, here comes this bastard again at the end of this 1,000 years to deceive people. I'm not going to want to do anything. But then that would be disobedience, and I'll be kicked out if he says, I need you to go, because Donna was from Servant of God P46 explained that we're going to be like the angels. This is true. We're going to be like angels. When the person came to speak to John in the book of Revelations, he mistook him for being an angel. When people come to speak to you, they have to give you a message straight from God and nothing else. If they're giving you a message that is not from God and about Jesus and about the Holy Spirit, then it is a demon tricking you. And the reason they're doing it is because their desire is to trick you. Nothing more. They just like the fact that we think we're so spiritual, but yet we can still be tricked. So they're tricking you. John didn't even recognize who the person was. He said, I'm a fellow servant and of the redeemed. The person looked like an angel, but even still, the enemy transforms himself into an angel of light, and his emissaries or his messengers as messengers of righteousness. So they come to you as if what they have to say to you is a good message, and they give you a good feeling. And they may even appear to you as angels or dead loved ones. They are tricking you. But the point is that we're going to be like the angels. We're going to glow in like the brightness of the stars of the firmament and everything like that. You guys know your Bible. If you don't, read it and learn it, because they'll be taking them away. We're going to be like the angels. And so we're going to have jobs to do. People are going to be sent back during the tribulation to do certain jobs. There's going to be like groups of people sent back and forth. Some may have to stay the whole time. Some may have to. People are going to have different missions. Just like when you're in the Army, you have the Marines, you have the Navy, you have the Army. You have different ranks, and people have different jobs. Every joint supplies. Okay, and so even during the millennial kingdom, we'll have to do things and separate the good from the bad, and we will be the reapers. Who will be reaping? Obviously, the 144,000 are going to be spread throughout the whole world, and we'll have to kind of gather them to, or whatever the case may be. But I'm going to want to do nothing but literally hold on to Jesus' ankle for the entire 1,000 years, knowing that bastard is going to be let free at the end of it. And it's like, here we go again. My mother would say, you're being adversarial, you're being controversial, you're being contrary. There's that anger again. You're yelling, you're being abrasive. She would be saying these things and she would be right. But it's like, I don't feel like any human being on the planet really, really, really understands like what it is that like I go through emotionally. Even in that dream and in that vision as a child, he spoke to me. And when he, I asked to be made perfect, he said, no one's perfect. And I remember thinking, I thought, okay, I'm leaving this conversation because this person is not God, because he's telling me that no one's perfect. And I know that Jesus is perfect. So anything that's trying to tell me that is a liar. God forgive me, but he just laughed. He laughed. He said, "You're not me." And I remember thinking, "Oh my God, I'm talking to Jesus." And because I had said that in my mind, I was just thinking, okay, this person, I'm about to go because he's talking about some ain't nobody perfect, and Jesus is perfect. He got his mind, but in my head, but he heard me, and I was thinking, wow. He said I'm going to do very many bad things, and I've shared, like I said, I've shared these tidbits of my testimony before. I guess because it's not a video that's titled "My Testimony." People I don't understand, but whatever. It was one person who I admire, and we have a lot of similarities. GAZ Pipeline, I think 916 is his screen name, and then someone else, another person separately, who I don't even think knows that Gas Pipeline. I don't know his name, 916, but they don't know each other. It was two different people, and it's just been in my heart. It's been so heavy, it would kind of be before even last year. I guess I was like, I guess I got to share my testimony. And I just really didn't want to. I was diagnosed with HIV. I don't discuss that. I have discussed it with my close sisters and brothers here on YouTube in private messages. That was some years ago. I struggled with that. I stopped taking my medications. I was told by a woman who is a minister who explained to me what is her opinions and what it is her bishop has to say. And, I stopped taking my medicine before. And she said, oh, well, yeah, you're feeling fine now, but that's what they always say. You feel fine. And then 6 months later, you're in the hospital and then you don't understand why. And it's like, and then, you die. And then that's the healing. She basically told me that would be the way I would be healed. Well, it's been 6 months. I'm not dead. I'm not in the hospital. I do not go to the doctor, the national, whatever you call the Board of Health, the national, what is it? Oh God, the Department of Health. They've been sending letters and trying to track me down. I ripped them up. And the doctors have been calling. I don't answer. They can't reach me. They call anybody that they know that I know. They can't reach me. I don't visit. I don't take anything. Because either the Bible is true or it's not. Either Jesus Christ can heal you or he can't. It's either or. And of course that's from, like I said, the drugs and sleeping around with just pretty much anyone, just wanting attention and wanting affection and feeling like it's okay because society was okay with it. And I wasn't feeling condemned and everything. And I brought that up because in the vision, when he said you're going to do many bad things, I knew that he was speaking with the gay thing. And I wanted to pull away from him then because it was too much understanding. He would speak certain things, but even what he didn't say, I could still understand. It's like I could discern God's spirit. I don't know how to explain it. Like I understood his heart and I knew what it is, the understanding he was giving on top of what it is he was saying. And I was like, oh no, he's trying to tell me that. And I refused to receive that. And I go through that now. I don't want to be in a place for a certain amount of time. I don't want to be doing a certain job. I don't want. It's just like nothing in my life is what it is I want. And people say be content, and content lasts for a moment. It lasts for a day, a week, or so. But that's not. It's like I'm not happy. I'm not happy. People can be content. I'm not happy because in another dream I explained. He just basically was kind of trying to let me know that and I don't remember anything that he said, but I know that he was trying to just minister to me about my life. And about just living holy and living for him and not really seeking the things that the world has to offer is what I just remember, having an understanding of what it is he was trying to say. And I kind of just was lashing out. And the dream ended very abruptly because God was really just like, and that was pretty much the last dream or vision I ever had, because we also had a discussion in the church when, about my call, and he was letting me know that he wanted me to be a minister and I wanted to dance. I wanted to sing. I just wanted to know which one was going to be successful, and I didn't want to sing gospel music because what's considered traditional gospel is what I knew was not what it is I was to do, but there was no praise and worship. I had never heard of Christian like music outside of gospel music because the music industry is segregated and there's racism in gospel music. So the black music is called gospel, and then the white music is called contemporary Christian. And whenever I would hear contemporary Christian, I don't ever remember hearing it. And if I did, I'm pretty sure I thought, oh, it's country music, and which is probably changed the station. Now the contemporary Christian sounds like rock. I love Misty Edwards and people like that, but they didn't exist. Doing music that way did not exist, so I did not understand. I thought, oh, well, I'll be a secular singer and I'll put a gospel song on my albums. And then after a while, I'll like transition into gospel and still have all that money that I made doing secular music and have a lot of those fans still, which is what people try to do now. That was the idea that's what you see them doing in the music industry, but that's not what they did when I was growing up in the 80s, but that's what they do now because the devil put those same thoughts in their head. And God wasn't pleased with that, and he was not pleased with I was very upset because I feel like there was no transition point, and that's what I'm struggling with now. People, once they get born again, go through a whole years of being sort of in and out, enjoying God's grace and mercy, going through periods of backsliding and coming back, and going through periods of just sort of lukewarmness, and periods of where like they know certain things are wrong. They're like, okay, well, at least I've given this up, but I'm still just, waiting for deliverance. No, you're really just still waiting to get to the point where you've decided, yes, I am going to really stop smoking. Yes, I really am going to stop drinking. Well, okay, I'm not running around and sleeping with a lot of people, but I mean, I do have a boyfriend, but at least I'm not sleeping around. So it's like I'm going from glory to glory. These types of games. Even as a child, I kind of felt like, well, then I should have that, which is so evil and wicked. But it's like I struggle. People can be content when they're over their 50s and 60s, and you already have kids and you've been married. I mean, whatever, And when you can honestly look back and say that you've pretty much done the right things, you didn't do, you weren't on drugs, you weren't drinking alcohol, if you weren't like partying too much, you weren't sleeping around, you didn't catch any like permanent STDs, you didn't. But when you have that guilt, that shame, and all of that, and to when you, especially when you get to the point where I've been for quite some time, where that it is because of your own character traits, when that it's not so much that people teased and made fun, which they were wrong, but it's more that you allowed it to bother you, and that hurts. My grandmother would always tell me these types of things, and I would get so angry, kind of curse her out, God forgive me, because it's that type of truth that I don't want to hear, especially when I know that I can't even speak that truth to other people because all they're going to do is get angry, get mad, and they're not going to receive it. And there's nothing I can do about that if they refuse to receive it. But at the same time, sharing my testimony gives people more of a reason to discredit me. It gives them more of a reason to feel like, well, okay, I'm not that bad. Falling to sin and saying, okay, I'm going to smoke a cigarette even though I've been delivered from that. I've done that. Everything from the sex, to the porn, to the cigarettes, to the drinking. Since I've been born again in 2009, I have fallen into those things at one point or another through the whole time. Talking to people online, sending inappropriate pictures and things. I have fallen victim to those things throughout the entire time. At one point or another, having to get up, having to repent, and having to continue to do my ministry because God said so. All the while still trying to purge and clean my heart, because the issue is I was doing it from the outside. The issue is I was focusing on so much of the crap on YouTube, like people told me, with the Illuminati and all of that stuff. God wants us to know about those things, but I had become too focused. The Jewish feasts and everything, God wants us to know about those things. It's very important, but I was too focused in feeling like people were so unholy because they won't celebrate the Feast of Trumpets. But meanwhile, when it's time for Feast of Trumpets, I wasn't making a real effort to do it like on my own in my house. But I wasn't going out for Hanukkah to buy no candles. I wouldn't get up and get a job to make enough money to at least buy some candles for Hanukkah. But yet, so I had become a Pharisee, and the Lord spoke to me one day and just said religion. And just let me know it's all religion. People are doing it just for religious purposes. They're doing it to feel righteous, to feel holy, to earn holiness, which my father had told me. But it's like if God don't tell me sometimes, I'm like, don't say nothing to me, nobody. Unless what you're saying is from God. And if it's from God, whether I want to hear it or not, I might fuss. I might complain, I might talk back, I might say nothing, I might catch an attitude. That does not mean that I don't know that what you're saying is from God. And so then after a few hours, days, weeks, whatever, they'll seek and I will receive it and I will begin to move forward. But it's like if people aren't speaking the oracles of God, it's almost like don't hold conversation with me. It's almost like don't hold conversation with me. So it's about earning things. And yes, Jesus Christ fulfilled the law, and it says that he is the end. And I did look that word up because somebody mentioned that the other day when someone was speaking about the commandments. I think it was Reverend Betsy or someone. I don't know who it was. And they spoke about the commandments. And I said, well, and the word means the end. He ended it. But we are still to follow God's order, his plans for our life. morally, ethically, you know, the sacrificial laws. A lot of those things were sacrificial, were cultural, were or agricultural, and things like that. But morally, but see, those things we know in our heart. You know it's wrong to have sex with an animal. You know that. Whatever country you from, if you've never heard about Jesus or the Bible, you know that. So I mean, of course, we understand those things, and it seems like people are preaching sloppy grace, and it is because they are, because the way they preach it, they don't want people to be burdened. They don't want people to leave. They don't want people to not pay their tithes and things. But you also don't want them to feel like it's very comfortable for them to just live in sin. They make it seem like it's the rule that you can have sex up to the day before you die and still end up into heaven. That is the exception, and it does happen. Has happened. I have personal stories, but that's not the rule. It's not the rule. It's not the rule. Sometimes you have to be put on your deathbed, which was a situation for my cousin. As I explained, he confessed to the rape of me when I must have been 3 or 4 or something. But I felt so much compassion. I felt sorry for him because he had been raped and repeatedly, and probably I think by more than one person growing up. And so it just, he probably was very jealous because my mother was pretty, and because he really like loved and adored, and almost just my mother was like perfect, like what every woman should be. And my dad was there a little bit, to take me to the movies and things like that, but his wasn't at all, and so I felt compassion for him. And even that brings back the memories of how, once my father became so religious, we couldn't go to movies, we couldn't do this, we couldn't do anything, and it was, so I kind of rejected him, but I understand why. When I did learn, that helped. That's once I got born again, it helped me to understand my father, because when the Lord started revealing to me all the about the Illuminati and all that stuff that goes on in the music industry and the movies, I now understand like why it is those Pentecostals will say don't watch movies. They didn't have the full understanding. They understood that there was something just evil about it. They had at least that little bit of discernment. But of course now my dad's a total opposite, where it's okay, he wants to go to the movies, and for me I'm like, I don't want to know. But then he may be stronger spiritually, and he can discern and see the good and not let the bad affect him. But that's not the reality for me. Sometimes that can be frustrating for a parent, because they're like, well, that should be the reality. That should be where you should be. Yes, but I'm not there, and that's what I feel the most frustrated about, is because I am not perfect, and I'm not there. I don't. Yes, I am controversial, contrary, and get angry and all of that. It can be abrasive and aggressive and all of that. Yes, because there's still things in my heart that God is working out. Nobody can fix it. Nobody can help me. But yes, I do appreciate having someone to talk to, but it's like I have no one, because whoever it is, it's like it's too much for them to handle. So I do prefer to be by myself. I don't like to be bothered. People are asking, well, what was the actual point when you woke up? When I was drunk and collapsed and passed out and cracked my skull on the concrete in the ghetto, and almost died, knowing for a fact that I was dying, hearing demons laugh and taunt me, and everything began to spiral, and my soul began to be sucked down into the earth, and the voice said, you better pray. And the way they were saying it was like, I don't understand how he has forgotten where he was when he was a child. And I don't understand. I must be one of my angels saying, I don't understand how he doesn't realize how like his prayers go through, just because of the anointing and the grace of God. Just like regardless of what he's doing in his life, his prayers, boom, especially if he prays for someone else, answered. But I just forgot. Even when the voice said that, I was thinking, oh my God, pray. Oh yeah, pray. Oh yeah, my dad, when I was little, pray. How do you pray again? Oh Jesus. And I just remember just basically saying, look, I can't promise you anything. There's no need in me telling you, if you let me live, I'm going to do this or that, because most likely I'm not. I'll say it for a couple of days, but you already know I'm going to end up just doing what I want to do. But I just don't want to die here. Please do not let me die here like this. And I woke up and I was at home for 3 days. I woke up sweaty. I don't even know if I had urinated on myself. My whole body was wet, like it was wet. I remember total darkness. And I remember total like clouds, like being inside of a cloud. If you've ever been on an airplane, and it was like a very bright cloud, and a wind, a wind. Because I pretty much had died, is my belief. And I believe he had to put the breath of life like back in me. And then one person saying, see, I told you he was all right, man, get up, because everybody else, I guess, was saying I was dead. And someone told me there was blood there, and I didn't see any blood. I remember checking. I remember knowing in my spirit checked for blood, and there was no blood, but someone else asked me about blood. They said they had saw lots of blood. There was it the blood of Jesus they were seeing in the spirit? Because at that point, whatever the battle, the angels had come to battle the demons and all of that, I'm sure must have been going on. So did just being in that cloud of glory intensify other people's spiritual gifts, which are laying like latent, like what's the word, like dormant within them? Did that become awakened so he was singing in the spirit, or was I really bleeding and God like fixed it and it was gone? Who knows? But I just knew, oh, I was so terrified. So I said, well, I have to sing, and I went in the house and I just laid there, and all the songs that came on the radio, it was just like with the book of Psalms. It was like God knew it was in my heart, and I just was pouring out my heart in song. Come before my presence with singing, into my gates with thanksgiving, and into my courts with praise. I didn't know any of those scriptures then. And finally, a few days I went to the hospital and I met a woman there who I was singing songs on the radio, and I just felt like singing, and she said, you remind me of my grandson, and he sings too. There's one song he sings called "I Won't Complain." And of course, people will always ask me to sing that song. I don't know the words, and sometimes I just refuse to even try to sing the little bit that I do know, because people just always saying I'm complaining too much. It has to come out. If it's in my heart, it's going to come out. What they want is for it to not be in my heart, and that's what God wants, and that's what I want. But if it's there, it's there. And if it's when there's things I don't like, if it's not today, it's going to be next week or next year. I'm going to say something about it. So now it's been over an hour, and as you see, I'm nowhere near finished my testimony. I have left out so many stories, so many things. As one of my pastors used to say, you cannot tell it all. I've given you from youth through teenage through now. I mean, I didn't even talk about when I used to do ballet for many years, and I really wanted to do ballet, and I became injured and had to leave college and felt like pretty much life was over. And that's when I really started just being an absolute slut and just doing drugs. And I just felt like here I am again. I'm living in the same ghetto neighborhood that the only thing I wanted was to not have to live here. The only thing I wanted was to be able to take care of myself and to have money, which seems to be impossible because I don't come from some great family. I'm not Paris Hilton. I'm not rich. I don't have the best education. I'm not good at sports. I'm not that intelligent, And so here I am again, stuck with people who I don't even understand because they speak like ebonics and like slang, and I didn't understand slang. I had to take speech lessons when I was a kid because I couldn't speak properly because of my grandmother's accent and the way she speaks. Even though she's from D.C., her family's from North Carolina, and even my father, people think that he's from the country, and he kind of has an accent, and then the ebonics and things were a part of how I spoke, and I just couldn't pronounce words. I would say shrimp with a T and shriek instead of street. And so and so then once of course, as I said, they would say I was trying to be white because once I took the lessons and learned how to speak the appropriate way, that's what my mother wanted. It was the best thing for me so that I would have to go to these tutors in elementary school. And she's a dark-skinned lady, very nice lady, very well-dressed and very well-mannered and very well-spoken. And I told her I wanted to be an actor, so I was pretty much imitating how she spoke, and so I began to speak English the appropriate way, even in like first and second grade, when everyone else was speaking like ghetto language and dressing like they were from the hood, and I'm in my dressing like I go to an all-boys Catholic school, people hated me, There's so many things I've left out. Lots of things that I just don't remember right now, don't want to talk about, or whatever the case may be, I'm living in that hospital though for 3 days. And even now, like the memory becomes vague because when you go back and sin wipes away your memory of good things. I might want to write that down. When you sin, the enemy will wipe away your memory, especially when you smoke drugs, especially marijuana. It will wipe away your memory of good things. And but I was there for about 3 days, and Jesus came into my room and said, choose today. The one person who actually made the video specifically said, like, what was your testimony of how you woke up? He said, choose today. And I want to say there were 2 angels there, and I had to keep, like, thinking about it. And there was one at the foot of my bed and one beside Jesus. I think those may have, like, I couldn't see them. They were invisible, but I was aware. Like the picture behind me. Like, see how he's invisible? But, of course, the pictures they had to kind of make it somewhat visible, So I knew they were there, but they were even more invisible than what's in this picture. But right here I'm touching it, but you know you can't really, more invisible. But well, I guess because I'm touching it like that. But see if you do it more, even more invisible to this. But I still was aware they were there, and they were kind of, the one was just standing at the bed like this, looking, and the one was kind of relaxed, like sort of relaxed, leaning on the like heater or whatever it is in the hospital. It was the same hospital where I was born. I think on a different floor. I'm not really sure. My mother couldn't really remember which floor I was on when I was born. I wouldn't be interested if it was the same exact room. But and Jesus, and I think I want to say Jesus had the paper. I can't remember, somebody had the paper. But I think the book of life, the Lamb's book of life, is his book. You know, he says, "I will blot your name out." So he was writing. He was like, "Okay, we can write this down. Choose today." And I remember having a talk and just was very upset because I'm thinking, well, if you can, I said, if you can split the Red Sea, then why can't you do something with me? Because I remember thinking, this is not going to work. I don't know why you're here. If you don't change me on the inside and the heart, then this is all this going up to the pastor and shaking his hand and right-handed fellowship and giving God your heart and the pastor your hand. I did all of that at 13, at 25, at 27, and each time I would end up falling into sin. And because of my upbringing, it's like, oh my God, see, you did good for a week, and now look, you just look, see, you look, you went in there and you did something sexual. You're going to hell. Why would you try? Because the devil had told me when I was younger that I was born gay. And it was like kind of a conversation in my heart, with just even with my own thinking. But the idea was that because everyone could not go to heaven. He's like, well, everyone can't go to heaven. And in my mind, I was thinking, oh, yeah, because my whole family is Christian. And what about like a family in India who's never heard about, you know, like Hindus and people like Buddhists and stuff who don't know Jesus? It wouldn't be fair for their whole entire family from all the way back, all the generations, to be in hell. So I have to go to hell so that there will be room for someone else in heaven. Stupid, but that's what I believed. And that's when I opened my heart and began to say, okay, well, let me explore this gay thing. Let me just really look. Oh, yeah, he is attractive. I've always known when a person is attractive, but could I be with a guy really? And become curious and then begin to say out of my mouth. And the first time I remember saying out of my mouth, I think I'm gay, my friends kind of looked like, you've always been gay. We've always known that. And they just kind of laughed at me and we just went on about our business. I remember thinking, oh my God, they accept me. But I also remember something going boom, boom, and like they were walking in front of me and I kind of paused, like, what in the world? And even later, I think I told them, like, my chest hurts because I felt something like boom, like hit me in my chest. Like those demons have been chasing and following and tormenting and putting thoughts in my head all my life. And finally, once I said those words, they got access and like bombarded my soul. And I could physically feel it. I remember that. I was maybe 19, 20, 19, about to turn 19. And just life just went out of control. I was the boy in high school, mind you, who did not have sex, who um, got good grades, was very talented, voted most likely to be remembered, voted most talented. Everyone sort of liked me. Everyone knew me. Um, I was popular for some reason because people knew me, but I didn't know them. I didn't have really nice clothes or very fashionable clothes. I didn't feel attractive, but people like respected me, and that's just the way it was. And I was happy. You know, I was always on scholarship to whatever dance school I went to. The people I danced with, for those of you who know ballet, were Teresa Reichland and Amar Ramazar and Ashley Knapp, you know, at Pennsylvania Ballet during the summers, and Eric Underwood. You know, Derek Spears, who was on So You Can Dance many years ago. He kind of got kicked off because of his attitude, whatever. You know, the best. It's all I knew. Hotels were paid for, tuition was paid for. I was receiving a stipend from the school. People was paying thousands of dollars to go to Pennsylvania Ballet. I paid nothing and received a stipend just to have some spending money, and was in a 5-star hotel or 4-star, whatever the case may be. When they had the Republican National Convention, that's the hotel where the Republicans stayed. I remember going out in my little tiny little booty shorts to go run the streets with my friend Michael, and all the Republicans were just checking in at that moment, and they were like, some laughed and made jokes, some really looked outraged, and some just were looking, and I was thinking, oh my God, these perverts, they trying to make some money. I was thinking, oh, these old perverted men. And I was like, what's going on? I said, oh, it's the Republican National Convention. Oh, these are senators. I thought maybe we can make some money, just jokingly, but whatever. I really probably could have. Um, hmm. But I was happy on my way to hell. But I was happy because I was doing what I wanted to do, and that is the reason why it's like ministering to people are living the life they want because it's fun and it's comforting having the feeling that whatever it is you want to do with your life is okay. The choice is up to you, and the choice is up to you. But there are consequences spiritually in the spirit realm. What you're doing, there has spiritual consequences, and that is what they don't teach. That is what they don't know. You know, and kind of don't care because, as I said, they are happy. They are happy. And so since once I left out of the hospital, the angels, I was still aware that they were with me. They've always been with me. There was a girl in college who could see spirits, and I kind of doubted that they were angels because she thought they were people. So I said maybe these spirits are trying to trick her to thinking that they were angels. But I kind of do think she was right because when I commanded the demons, because they were demons living in my apartment there, when I commanded them to leave, they left, and I was in sin, which is so funny because now all of the stress, the fear, is another big stronghold that I deal with it's like, how can I be fearful? But even then, when I was like a blatant sinner, I walked into my apartment and said, okay, I don't know which demons are in here, but you have to go. Because first of all, I didn't ask you to come here. Second of all, you don't pay any bills. You're not paying my tuition. And I don't like you playing with my keys. And I remember knowing in my heart, and perhaps it was my angel speaking to me or even the Holy Spirit, you have to move out of the way because I was standing in the doorway. And so I remember kind of hearing that like in my spirit, which I didn't even know how to verbalize or didn't even understand what was going on. But I said, oh, and I kind of stepped away from the door and I could sense the thing walking past me and going down the steps. And I remember thinking, oh God, now he's going to go downstairs and mess with someone else. And I ended up leaving that school. But The Sixth Sense was filmed there. When he was standing in the middle of the street and there's that big brick wall, if they would have panned down a little further, you would have saw the gate. There's a gate on that wall like that leads into our dorms. And the whole story about Stuttering Stanley and all the people being hung and how it was a mental asylum. The school he was at was across the street from the place that used to be the actual asylum, which was our dorms. They did not film there. They were, I think, filming during the time that I was there, like right after, like I left, or something like that. And but there was like a little row houses across the street that they had turned into like a computer technology school for adults or something. And so yeah, that's all of those stories were accurate and was going on in the dorm where I lived. I'm just at this point it's over an hour, but I'm just thinking of any other little interesting stories. Anyway, so I was aware that those angels were with me when I left the hospital, and they were handing me papers and handing me information. And I remember knowing that I was late, that there was something I was supposed to do, that there was an appointment I was supposed to make. And when the Lord began to remind me of the dreams and visions and of the seven, which I remembered earlier in this video, I spoke to you about the seven, and I've mentioned it so many times before. I knew that, oh my God, the time when I'm supposed to be telling them that it's to warn them. Because I told him, when you come, I want to go with you. But I knew that if I continued to do bad things, I couldn't go. And so I needed to know ahead of time so that I could get my heart prepared and get myself prepared. And the deal was, okay, well, let me know ahead of time so I can prepare myself. And in return, I will warn others. And so the balance right now is there's a lot just of preparing myself, I'm trying to do. A lot I don't understand because there's so much doctrine. There's one school that, oh, God's grace, and he's going to purify you and you cannot clean your own garments. And then there's the other school that, no, it's your responsibility to stay right and to keep your heart in the right place. And it's your responsibility. And it's like, well, what's the truth? What's the balance? I don't understand because the prophecy even, it is in layers. It is this and that. It's not, oh, the temple is your body. No, the temple is going to be actually built. It's both. Your body is the temple, but there's going to be an actual temple. There's going to be people that are going to be doing things throughout the tribulation. The 144,000 are going to be caught up to Mount Zion, which is, I believe, in New Jerusalem, as it's coming down from heaven. So that would be a type of the rapture. The two witnesses are going to be raptured. There's a belief that there's going to be two groups of witnesses as well as the two actual witnesses. I do believe this. When they will be here, I don't know because it's going to be 7 years. I believe that people will be kind of in and out, going back. You do a mission, you come back, you get another mission. You may have to stay for a week, a month, a year. It's like tours of duty in the military. Everyone has a different tour of duty. So all that's going to be going on, and all of that's going to be raptured. So it's going to be, you understand what I'm saying? a lot that we don't fully understand. It's not that we haven't been told or we don't know that it's not in the Bible, but it's that we don't fully and completely understand. But the church is going out of here before the tribulation comes. And I understood that in that vision, even as a child. I don't remember being taught those things. Perhaps it soaked into my spirit because of, when I would be in church, barely listening or sleeping or whatever the case may be. I don't remember what people would say. I'm not 100% sure of how old I was. I think I was around 11, 12, 13, 14, younger than 15, but older than 11 when the Lord let me know that I was to be, a minister. And I want to say I was between 7 or 9. Um, when he gave me that vision. There was the other vision where the church people turned into demons, and then a witch tried to give me a needle. It was so funny that I was in the closet when I came out and I got the needle, and it didn't work though. So I think that represented the HIV. Being in the closet, I think represented homosexuality. There was so much darkness in there. I remember feeling running from this spirit, which, like I said, those demons of lust and perversion and all types of demons were like chasing me down and taunting and like trying to gain access to my life. And I was trying to like run and hide from them, but I ended up going into darkness. And this, the neighborhood and the people I was around it was all of the darkness. And so in the dream, I remember just being in that closet in the darkness and thinking, oh no, the demon's in here. And I remember covering my eyes because I didn't want to see it or whatever, and then feeling like it was gone. But I understand now, or I believe now, that it wasn't so much that it was gone. It kind of got into me, and I kind of gave way to the witch because their witchcraft. The witch she was chasing me, and I was just like, she's not gonna leave and I'm not going to get out of this closet unless I take this, which was the bad idea that I had when I accepted what the doctors said when they gave me the diagnosis, even though I heard my angels clearly saying they are lying. I'm sorry, you do not have to accept that. That's not truth. You don't have to take that or accept that. And but in my mind, I remember it was like a whirlpool and I couldn't think and I didn't understand. And I thought, well, what do you mean? Because medicine and doctors and they did the test, they tested my blood, and I thought, oh, and then I listened to the spirits that I was more used to, which was those wicked, evil spirits in my mind saying, oh, they're trying to trick you. They just don't want you to take your medicine because they know you're going to die. And I thought I was losing my mind. My mom had told me that people, a lot of times with HIV lose their mind or something. And I remember praying to God to just please don't let me lose my mind. I accept this. It's not like, hello, I've been out there. I knew this was going to happen because in my heart, I kept feeling like, well, that's going to just be the case because you're out here living in sin, this sinful lifestyle. I always knew, like, in deep down in my heart, like, relationships in that is not going to work. It's just sin. It's not. You can enjoy the sex all you want, but a real relationship, a real relationship will never work without God, a three-strand cord. So if God's not in it, you can cancel it. I never agreed with gay marriage. Even when I was gay actively, I just couldn't understand why two men thought that it was going to work. I'm thinking, are you serious? Most of the people, it's been mostly one-night stands. It's been hundreds of people. Some of them I liked, some of them I loved, but I knew it wasn't going to work. I would do something to hurt them, or they would get tired of me, or whatever the case may be. And I just said, it's just not going to work. I would never go. So I just never understood. But of course, there are those who believe that they're better than people like me because even though they're gay, they're not like whorish or whatever the case may be. And these are all just, issues and things that, like I say, I share, hoping that it's going to bless someone. But when you get 4 views and no comments and no one saying, oh, this blessed me, no one saying where I can identify, no one saying thank you for helping me with my situation and helping me to understand that I'm not alone. Then I just feel like I'm just on here blurting all my business out for the entire freaking world. That's why I just never really made a full testimony video. And that's why this one is over an hour long, because I'm not doing this again. I don't want to add anything ever unless, something pops up. And most of these things I mentioned before. But I remember those angels saying, you don't have to accept this, but I couldn't receive that. And so I think that's what that part of the dream was about, was when the witch and the needle, and I left, and I was just everything was dry places. It was dry and deserty and ugh. And then some people showed up with a military tank and pulled me all. It was people walking, and I remember feeling in my heart like, oh, these are my friends. Oh, these are your friends. you know. And I'm like, friends, I don't know these people. And they pulled me up on shoot the tank. And I'm like, okay, some people are down there, but they pulled me all up here. Why is he giving me this gun? Well, I don't know how to shoot no gun. This is a big gun. And he like gave me, I'm like, all he have, he gave me a helmet. I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I need the helmet. Where are we going? Why do I have a gun? I need bullets. And I think that person did give me bullets. Like he had, but I was thinking, okay, you gave me one, like he had like four. I think he gave me like one of those things you can put over your shoulders, and there's like bullets going all the way around, you know. I'm thinking, you have three, I only have one. Serving with the one talent. And we kind of, I could see grass and sunshine in the distance. I was thinking, okay, well that's the direction we're going in, so thank God, you know. But I still don't understand why I have this gun. I don't understand why I have this. I don't understand. And like, well, who do we have to fight? Why? And I just thinking, well, okay, as long as we're going to some grass. I don't know what the grass symbolizes, or the sun, you know. And so at this point in my life, I'm at the point in that dream, to me, like when I was just walking in the desert. And you know, but I've met so many people here, so I sometimes think like I am, you know, on the tank with the guns and everything, but I'm still saying I just do not understand what I'm supposed to do with all of this. I'm just trying to get to where the sunshine is. You know, and it's very hurtful because I know that the Lord is coming, and I knew that I was running late, and I thought I was years late, but I was really like months, you know. I really used to think that it was Pentecost, that the rapture was going to happen around that time because of the 3 days and so much revelation that God gave me and so much understanding. But there was a lot of confusion, a lot of turmoil, a lot of issues in my heart, things going on in my life, different attitudes and things that coming from other people, which was really kind of still goes back to my attitude and my beliefs and everything like that. And it's just been a struggle, even since being born again. But I knew that we only had 7 years, and just and even in this struggle, and in the, you know, how much time I spent on YouTube, I really didn't need to, like people were saying, but there was nothing else for me to do. Living in the same neighborhood around the same people, it was like inevitable that I was going to fall, and it's like the demons knew it. The people in my family and my loved ones, even at the church, was like hoping and praying, but they could see it coming, and was wondering if he gonna, if it will, how far will he fall? Will he recover? You know, and I could sense that they felt that way, and that was just aggravating. And, you know, this religion, I'm so tired of it. I want to do my call. I want to live my life. I don't want to assist and help people with their ministries, with their calls, with their life, anything. I want to do things for me. I don't like the fact that we have very little time. It's not that I enjoy that. That means my niece is never, never going to get out of elementary school. My baby brother, this is my baby brother. That's his car. I knew for sure he was going to get married. My mother says I have a problem with gluttony. She's right. There was a time I was, you know, I knew I needed to eat healthy. I knew I needed to fast and pray. And true religion is visiting the elders and the sick. And fasting is really a thing of the heart. But that's why I don't watch TV, because fasting is not just about food. It's about fasting from the things of the world. So not listening to secular music and not watching TV is fasting, but everyone else I know watches them, and they want you to watch TV. And of course, I love television. I wanted to be an actor, singer, and all of that. So of course, I love TV. It's not like I'm just, oh, he's so holy and righteous. No, that's my way of fasting. And yes, I will cut back. I cut way back on foods, and I was trying to lose weight and everything because, like I said, I just knew he was getting married. I met the girl that I just really believed that he was working towards getting his money and getting his life, finances and things together so he could marry her, and she's just lovely in every way. And I was really, the physical fasting was because I was like, I need to be in shape because my brother, you can't really tell, but you maybe in his football picture. How can I say? He was, you know, but you probably know the shoulder pads. He was really buff, you know, and I'm thinking, I can't be the older, crazy looking brother, and the middle brother is also in very good shape. But that's not going to happen because he's with the Lord now, you know. Got hit by a car. I had to preach his funeral. God said, oh, see, you thought it couldn't happen, that they would not let you preach in a church. But here you are in a real church with 1,000 people. I can say that I have never preached in a church where there was less than 1,000 people, because I have only preached once in an actual church in a pulpit, and there was about 900 or so people there. But it had to be at my baby brother's funeral. I've been evicted from my home, staying with an aunt, don't have a steady job, can't find a steady job. My cousin, she has a college degree in business and is having hell trying to find a job. She's looking for one every single night. God hasn't so much put it in my heart that I need to get a job. He has put it in my heart that I should have a mind towards working and taking care of myself and not living off of people. That issue he's dealing with. But as far as like, he hasn't said, go here, get this job. My friend said that the Lord is trying to show me that there's jobs out here, but I have to be willing to like look for them. I have to be willing to like do them. It might not be something I want to do, but I have to be willing to just like search and seek. And it's like just, and I even watched the video where there's somebody having a heart to work. I just really, it's not in my heart. Regular conversations just vex my spirit. I hate, like, it just makes me feel more out of place. I can't talk about the things I want to talk about. I have to be focused on things that are dumb. I feel like I'm living a lie because everything in life is geared towards working towards a future that is not happening. It's not going to damn it happen. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. The fact that Jesus Christ is coming soon, as I said, it will be 2016. Everyone else keeps making these dates. I did not calculate anything. The Lord would say, I didn't say anything. That's not what I said to you. And he was letting me know it wasn't about the rapture. It was about when the prince was coming. And that the prince in that scripture was the Antichrist. And I kept trying to go through in my head and it wasn't working. And finally, like after a year or so, I was like, why don't you just add 1967 plus 49 years? You know, 7 weeks is 7 Shabuah, 7, 7. 7 times 7 is 49. So add 49. What do you get? Okay, it's 2016, not 2017, like you were saying. And people are thinking that that's when he's going to return and that we're in the tribulation and everything because they don't understand that the Messiah in 9:25, chapter 9, verse 25 of Daniel is not the real Messiah. It's these man of sin. But of course, you know that before the day of the Lord, before he appears, there's going to be a departure. It says falling away. Yes, that means a real spiritual falling away, but it also means a physical departure. And that is speaking of the rapture, and that's going to happen before he appears in the summer of 2016. He revealed to Kijani from Kijani Marriott and to Barbara from God Sealer 7 and Yeshua's Remnant, and God Sealer 7 2, I think is another one of their channels. That time is going to be spring. He revealed to Kijani that the appointed time when he was, I believe, crucified or whatever was the time that it was, we were to be, or the day that he was caught up, the day that we're supposed to be caught up, the day that he was crucified, the day that we're supposed to be caught up or something like that. He revealed to Glenda Lomax that it's it's a 3-day process. And I was like, that's what the 3 days was about. I thought he was speaking of the 3 days that they waited for the Holy Ghost to come after they traveled for 7 days. After he left 40 days, they traveled 7 days, they waited 3 days, but he was really talking about the 3 days in the grave. Yet and still in Ethiopia, it's I think 2007. So how can you say a date? We have different time zones. It's 3:37 where I am. I don't know what time it's, what, 1:37, 12:37 in California. How would you record the time? We have strayed, we have erred because of our sins, according to a prophecy in the book of Yasher. They've named the calendars after pagan gods. And haven't you noticed that like the Jewish, quote unquote, which is really God's calendar, starts in the middle of our calendar? Of course, God's calendar is right. We're the one that's starting our month in the middle of the real months. When the new moon comes, hello, it's a new freaking month. But we start our month in the middle of the month and name them after pagan gods. So of course so then how can you say the day? God's calendar, they don't have names for days, they have numbers. In some places it'll be Monday still, whereas in other places it may be already technically Tuesday because the evening and the morning were the first day. So once like the sun goes down, it's the next day. It's starting. And then usually we'll just say, well, 7 o'clock if you want to give it a real like hour. That means if it's 5 o'clock somewhere and 8 o'clock somewhere else, then it's 2 different days. People didn't understand that. They don't understand that. Well, the word is see when it says no man knows. I've already mentioned this. They don't understand that it's a Jewish idiom, like give me 5 on the black hand side. I've said that. It's raining cats and dogs. No man knows the day or the hour. It refers to a wedding. But with the 3 days that Glenda talked about, the appointed time that Jesus was risen from the grave, or whatever it is that Kijani and Marioch said, and when even Barbara and Dan talked about, I think it was Easter or whatever the case may be. And I know it's 2016, so that's the appointed time for us to go. We don't have more than 3 years, and if nothing else, I know that the man of sin is to be it says Messiah the Prince, and he had me to look through that word Prince, and it's rooted in a word that I think is appeared or revealed or something like that. And so it's like, okay, so this is really tying into Thessalonians. That's going to be in the summer of 2016. Now, when the peace treaty will be signed, I don't know, because I don't think that's it's going to be, first of all, confirmed. He confirms a covenant, so they're going to make some kind of covenant. It could be one that they made in 1967. Maybe that, I'm sorry, whatever, 1973, or was it the Oslo Accords or whatever? I don't know. Was that the 80s, 1993 with Clinton and them? I remember seeing that on the news and thinking, oh my gosh, something was really like about that. I didn't really understand. I was like in middle school or something. But I was like, oh wow, this is really big. Oh, the Jews in it. Oh wow. Are they going to confirm that? Will they make another one? Why do they need to confirm it? Would it be because they're going to take land forcefully and do all types of things, and they're like, well, okay, you know what, we're going to just go ahead and give you what you want, but are you going to still give us our temple? And they're like, oh yeah, sure. I mean, we're going to honor the covenant. So we don't know when it'll be made. It can be made tomorrow. People say, oh my God, when is tribulation? They started the covenant. It's starting. The word said confirmed. When will it be confirmed? It says before the great and notable day of the Lord. Is that the day that the tribulation begins, or is the great and notable day of the Lord when Jesus Christ comes back to earth? Because it just says that the blood moons and all of that stuff will happen before he comes before them, before the great and notable day. I believe that the blood moons that are coming are the ones that are to happen before the tribulation starts. But I also believe that even when Christ returns to earth, like sometimes during tribulation, there's going to be some kind of blood moon or something, even though that's not on NASA's calendar. But of course, they don't run nothing. They don't rule the stars, and God does what he wants. So it's like, where do you go from it? Like, to me, it's like no need to plan anything or to do anything, really, But at the same time, I'm not really happy where my life is. There's things I want. And as I said, my testimony is ongoing. Still believing God for healing. Still believing God for many things. I don't need people to tell me anything about what I need to fix or what kind of attitude I have, because I already know. What I need for them to do is to pray. Who is praying for the prophet? Like who? I don't need ridicule. What I need is understanding that I'm not perfect. There are things in my heart that need fixing, and only God can do it. Some days I do well, some days I do not. I'm trying to figure all this out like everyone else. My only desire is to live with Jesus Christ and to be all that he would have me to be. Thank you for your time.